imposed by the subject upon phenomena, so that our real self is not in time and has no tomorrow. But he will still have to suppose that the time order of phenomena is determined by characteristics of what is behind phenomena, and this suffices for the substance of our argument. Reflection, moreover, seems to make it clear that, if there is any truth in our arithmetical beliefs, they must apply to things equally whether we think of them or not. Two physical objects and two other physical objects must make four physical objects, even if physical objects cannot be experienced. To assert this is certainly within the scope of what we mean when we state that 2 and 2 are 4. Its truth is just as indubitable as the truth of the assertion that two phenomena and two other phenomena make four phenomena. Thus, constitution unduly limits the scope of a priori propositions, in addition to failing in the attempt at explaining their certainty. Apart from the special doctrines advocates by Kant, it is very common among philosophers to regard what is a priori as in some sense mental, as concerned rather with the way we must think than with any fact of the outer world. We noted in the preceding chapter the three principles commonly called, quote, laws of thought, end quote. The view which led to their being so named is a natural one, but there are strong reasons for thinking that it is erroneous. Let us take as an illustration the law of contradiction. This is commonly stated in the form, quote, nothing can both be and not be, end quote, which is intended to express the fact that nothing can at once have and not have a given quality. Thus, for example, if a tree is a beech, it cannot also be not a beech. If my table is rectangular, it cannot also be not rectangular, and so on. Now, what makes it natural to call this principle a law of thought is that it is by thought rather than by outward observation that we persuade ourselves of its necessary truth. When we have seen that a tree is a beech, we do not need to look again in order to ascertain whether it is also not a beech. Thought alone makes us know that this is impossible. But the conclusion that the law of contradiction is a law of thought is nevertheless erroneous. What we believe, when we believe the law of contradiction, is not that the mind is so made that it must believe the law of contradiction. This belief is a subsequent result of psychological reflection, which presupposes the belief in the law of contradiction. The belief in the law of contradiction is a belief about things, not only about thoughts. It is not, for example, the belief that if we think a certain tree is a beech, we cannot at the same time think that it is not a beech. It is the belief that if the tree is a beech, it cannot at the same time be not a beech. Thus, the law of contradiction is about things and not merely about thoughts, and although belief in the law of contradiction is a thought, the law of contradiction itself is not a thought, but a fact concerning the things in the world. If this, which we believe when we believe the law of contradiction, were not true of all the things in the world, the fact that we were compelled to think it true would not save the law of contradiction from being false, and this shows that the law is not a law of thought. A similar judgment applies to any other a priori judgment. When we judge that 2 and 2 are 4, we are not making a judgment about our thoughts, but about all actual or possible couples. The fact that our minds are so constituted as to believe that 2 and 2 are 4, though it is true, is emphatically not what we assert when we assert that 2 and 2 are 4. And no fact about the constitution of our minds could make it true that 2 and 2 are 4. Thus, our a priori knowledge, if it is not erroneous, is not merely knowledge about the constitution of our minds, but is applicable to whatever the world may contain, both what is mental and what is not mental. The fact seems to be that all our a priori knowledge is concerned with entities which do not, properly speaking, exist, either in the mental or in the physical world. These entities are such as can be named by parts of speech which are not substantives. They are such entities as qualities and relations. Suppose, for instance, that I am in my room. I exist, and my room exists. But does in exist? Yet obviously the word in has a meaning. It denotes a relation which holds between me and my room. This relation is something, although we cannot say that it exists in the same sense in which I and my room exist. The relation in is something which we can think about and understand, for if we could not understand it, we could not understand the sentence, I am in my room. Many philosophers following Kant have maintained that relations are the work of the mind. that things in themselves have no relations, but that the mind brings them together in one act of thought and thus produces the relations which it judges them to have. This view, however, seems open to objections similar to those which we urged before against Kant. It seems plain that it is not thought which produces the truth of the proposition, quote, I am in my room. It may be true that an earwig is in my room, even if neither I, nor the earwig, nor anyone else is aware of this truth, for this truth concerns only the earwig and the room. It does not depend upon anything else. Thus, relations, as we shall see more fully in the next chapter, must be placed in a world which is neither mental nor physical. This world is of great importance to philosophy, and in particular to the problems of a priori knowledge. In the next chapter, we shall proceed to develop its nature and its bearing upon the questions with which we have been dealing. End of Chapter 8. Read by M.L. Cohen, www.mojomove411.com.